Hi guys, welcome back to the Curly Reader. I'm Amanda, and today we are going to be talking recommendations for the upcoming Historathon. So during the month of February, Sarah from Sarah's Nightstand and I are going to be hosting a historical fiction themed readathon called Historathon, and we have 8 different prompts that we have kind of put together in form of a bingo board. I will link our announcement videos down below so you can check those out and get a link to the bingo board and all the prompts and all that fun stuff. But today I thought I would just share with you some recommendations for each prompt, and yeah, so let's just get into this. I have books everywhere and they're not really organized, so we're just gonna kind of roll with it. And a lot of these books that I'm sharing will cover multiple prompts, so keep that in mind as well. I have a list as well because I don't own all of these. So the first prompt that we have is a book with a male on the cover. The first one that I thought of when I thought of this is Refugee by Alan Grant, which is actually a middle grade book, and it has a boy on the cover though. It's about 3 different refugees in 3 different times in 3 different parts of the world, and it's absolutely fantastic. I loved it. I read it last year during middle grade March, and it was wonderful, but it does have a boy on the cover. Another middle grade book that I thought of for this prompt is Until Tomorrow, Mr. Marsworth, because it has a old guy on the front of it, so that would count, and that is set during the Vietnam War. So that is historical fiction. And then sorry, I forgot to grab all of these off my bookshelf before I started. But another one that would count for this is The Tattooist of Auschwitz, because this one has a male on the cover. I have not read this one yet though, but I do own it and it has a male on the cover. So that one would work for that prompt as well. So those are some ideas for ones that would work for having a male on the cover. A book set before 1900 is our next prompt, and for this, the first one that I thought of was The Kitchen House by Kathleen Grissom. This is one that I read a number of years ago and absolutely loved. It is set in the early 1800s, I believe, and it is set during the time of slavery, and it's on a tobacco farm in the South, and it is wonderful. I love this book. It's about Lavinia, who is Irish, and she is coming over from Europe on a boat, and her parents die, and so in order to pay for her passage on the boat, she becomes an indentured servant to a plantation owner. And so she's white, but she lives with the slaves, and so it's just kind of about, as she gets older, she then is brought into the big house and becomes a servant there, and it's about her relationship with the slaves, but with the people in the big house, and kind of where she finds her place. And it was wonderful. I love this book so much. The audiobook was really good as well. So there's this one. And then this one has a sequel to it called Glory Over Everything that was also really good. So that is one that was set before 1900. All right, where's another one? Another one that was set before 1900 is The Red Tent by Anita Diamant. This is one that is a historical fiction based off of a Bible story of Dinah in the Bible. And she was the younger sister of Joseph. And so it's just about her and living in the time of Jacob. From the Bible. Jacob was her father and his wives, and just kind of how the women were holding on to their own traditions while the husband was trying to be devoted to God. And it was so good. It was fictionalized because there's not a whole lot about Dinah in the Bible. But even if you don't read the Bible or you're not Christian, I still think that this would be a really good read. It's set obviously way before 1900, and it was just very interesting. So I really, really enjoyed this book. And then another recommendation that I had for before 1900 is pretty much any of the Philippa Gregory books. I know she is a very well-known historical fiction author. She writes a lot about like King Henry VIII and Tudor England and all of that kind of stuff. She has The White Princess and The Spanish Princess and all of that that's come out, The White Queen. That whole series has come out recently. So there's those as well that were set before 1900. I have read a number of her Tudor England books back in the day. Haven't read them recently, but I really enjoyed them at the time, and those would be great for this prompt as well. Sorry if my bookshelf just changed all back here. This is my historical fiction shelf and it just got purged. So, another one is These Is My Words. This is set in the 1800s, and this is the Diary of Sarah Agnes Prine, 1881 to 1901. And she's in the Arizona territories, and I'm not 100% sure what this one's about. I have not read this one. Another one that's set before 1900 is 1000 White Women, the Journals of May Dodd. This is another one I have not read yet, but it's on my owned TBR, and it is about a woman who basically goes out to marry Native Americans. I guess they did this back in the 1800s. They would send a bunch of white women out to marry the Native Americans to kind of try to mend relations between them, and that's what this is about. So that one's set in the 1800s. We also have America's First Daughter by Stephanie Dray and Laura Camoy. This is about Patsy Jefferson, who was Thomas Jefferson's daughter. So that's before 1900. I also have Victoria by Daisy Goodwin. This is about Queen Victoria. That was before 1900. Alison Weir's Innocent Traitor. This is during the time of King Henry VIII. So that's another one that was set back then. So anyway, as you can see, there are many, many options for this. So yeah, some of these I've read, some of these I haven't. So there are tons out there though, so that one shouldn't hopefully be too hard. All right, the next prompt I want to talk about is a book with dual timelines. And the first one that I have for this suggestion is Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate. This is about the Tennessee Children's Home Society down in Tennessee in the early 1939. And so this is told in dual timelines. I've read that. It's brilliant. I also have on this list The Storyteller by Jodi Picoult. This is a World War II book that is told in dual timelines about a woman who has a guy in a grief support group come up to her one day and tell him that he wants her to kill him. And she's like, why would I do that? And he said it's because he's a Nazi, or he was a Nazi, and she is Jewish. And her grandmother is a concentration camp survivor. And so it's all about her and her grandma telling her story and the guy telling his story. And it's really good. I really, really like this one. So that's another one that's told in dual timelines. Another one I've read that was told in dual timelines that I really, really loved is The 19th Wife by David Ebershoff. And I have lent this one out to a friend, so I don't have it in my possession right now. But this one was really good. It is the story of Brigham Young's 19th wife and her kind of story about leaving the church, the Mormons moving out to Utah, that whole transition, the birth of the Mormon church, and then her leaving the church and why she left it. And then there's a modern day kind of story that's going on as well. But I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was very interesting just to read about the beginning of the Mormon church, because that was something I really wasn't familiar with. All right, so then the next prompt that we have to talk about is a book that is set outside of the United States or Europe. The first book that I thought of for this prompt is Hum If You Don't Know the Words by Bianca Murray. This is set in the 1970s in South Africa, and it is brilliant. This is one of my favorite books of 2019. I love Bianca Murray so much and her writing so much. So this definitely would fit for that category. Another one that would fit for this category is Between Shades of Grey by Ruta Sepetys. This is set in Russia. And so this one would definitely work. This is a World War II book about kind of the Russian side of World War II and Stalin and his work camps and all of that kind of stuff. So there's that. Another one that would count for this is The Dreamer by Pam Munoz-Ryan. This is a middle grade book that is a historical fiction book based off of the life of Pablo Neruda, who was a Chilean poet. But this was really good. And this would count for male on the cover as well, because there's a little boy on the cover. But that one's set in Chile, so that would count. So those are the books that I had for that prompt for recommendations. The next one I have, or the next prompt that we need to talk about is a child as a character. Now, this one I have a lot for because I read a lot of middle grade, and so I have a lot of middle grade historical fiction that has children as characters. But I wanted to point out a couple of adult books that I know of that have children as characters. One is If You Don't Know the Words. There is a 10-year-old little girl in this book, so that would count. Another option is Before We Were Yours. One of the perspectives in this book is a little girl. So both of those would count for children characters. Another one that would count as a child character is The Life She Was Given by, I think it's Ellen Marie Wiseman wrote this one, and this is about a little albino girl who's sold to the circus by her mother. This one I read last year and I really enjoyed it, so that would definitely be one that would account for this. Another one that I did not bring up here is The Book Thief. That's a World War II historical fiction that has a child as a character. Another one, this one's a middle grade that I loved, and that is Echo. This has a number of children as characters, and it is a fantastic audiobook. If you read this one, read the audiobook because it is perfect. And I love this so much. This is about a harmonica that, kind of a magical harmonica that 3 different kids find at different times in their lives, and it's all historical fiction, and it's all kids, and it's just musical and brilliant, and this is the book that introduced me to Pam Munoz Ryan, and I love her now. So that's definitely an option as well. I also brought up Fever 1793. This is a middle grade, so this one has a child in it. So that's just a few options for books with children in it. The next prompt that we have is a time or event that you're unfamiliar with. For this one, I picked, I didn't bring it up here. Salt to the Sea by Readathon, which is about the sinking of the Wilhelm Gustave, which was a boat in Germany that was trying to escape, and it got hit by Russian torpedoes, I think, and it killed more people than the Titanic, and nobody knows about it. And it was something that I definitely didn't know about. This is YA. It's told from multiple perspectives of different teenagers, and it was amazing. I love this book so much, but that's definitely a time or event that a lot of people aren't really familiar with. Another one that I have for this again is If You Don't Know the Words by Bianca Murray. This is about apartheid, which a lot of Americans are not familiar with, which is a tragedy in and of itself, and I fall into that because before I read Born a Crime, I had never even heard of apartheid, so call me ignorant. So that is one. Another one that I don't own, but I loved, is Necessary Lies by Diane Chamberlain. This is set in the 1960s, I believe, in North Carolina, and it has to do with eugenics, and involuntarily sterilizing people of low income or people with mental disabilities. And that book just like makes you think, and it was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed that book. So that's definitely one if you are unfamiliar with the eugenics in the United States and kind of how late it continued to happen. That's definitely one to check out. All right, so that's all I have for that. The next prompt is a book with a real person featured in the book. So one that would count for this is Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate. One of the characters in here, Georgia Tann, was the founder of the Tennessee Children's Home Society, and she was a real person. So that would definitely count for that. Another one that would count for this is a YA World War II historical fiction book. This is Prisoner of Night and Fog. This is about a girl who was a family friend of Hitler's. And she kind of referred to him as uncle, and he is present and a character in this book. This is actually the first in a duology, so both of these would count for that because he makes an appearance in this one as well. But I really enjoyed these. It was very interesting to kind of see, because this is between the two wars when he's first rising to power, and it kind of explains how he came to power from somebody who was close to him. So that's definitely one that could count for that. Another one that could count for that is the Red Tent, because Dinah was a real person. Let's see here. I also, America's First Daughter, Patsy Jefferson and Thomas Jefferson were both real people, so that would count. Victoria, Queen Victoria, she was real. We have The Innocent Traitor again. This is about Lady Jane Grey. That's who this is about. So that would count because she is real. Any of the Philippa Gregory books would count. So yeah, there's some that would count for that. Of all of the ones that I mentioned, I have not read these ones, so keep that in mind. I'm not real sure, but they would count for that. I know that. All right, and then the last prompt we're going to talk about is a book with a location in the title. The first one that I thought for this, and I don't have it, I don't think, is the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. I read that one 2 years ago, whenever the movie came out. I read that, and it was really good. It's a World War II historical fiction about the island of Guernsey, so that would count. Another one that I thought of for this is a couple of the Alan Brenner books. I have Molokai and Honolulu, both. These are set in Hawaii in 1800s, I think. So those are some that would count for that as well. Also, one I have not read, Tattooist of Auschwitz. Auschwitz is a place. That would count. Let's see. And those are the ones that I came up with. Also, A Gentleman in Moscow would count. I have not read that. It is on my 2020 list. May appear on my Historathon TBR as well. But, so yeah, but that would count as well. So anyway, these are just some ideas of books that you could read for all of these prompts. A lot of these I've read. A few of them I haven't. I made sure to tell you which ones I haven't read. So just kind of putting that disclaimer out there. But a lot of these I've read and loved and would work wonderfully for any of these prompts. If you have any recommendations for these prompts of books that you have read that you loved, please leave those down below. I would love to get some ideas from you, as well as I'm sure other viewers would like to hear some more recommendations as well. So yeah, share those down below. And other than that, I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you stick around and subscribe. And until next time, see ya.